Hey friends, so welcome to Django Model Unleashed Part 11. Okay, as of now, what we covered is the last video we discussed about the built-in validation versus custom validation. So pretty much we are walked through all we are using the Django documentation itself as a reference in order to uh, do this tutorial. So I'm going to continue the same document. So if you scroll down a little bit, whatever we saw earlier, what we can have is the option called meta. So this is one of the useful option from Django perspective. Basically, the four letter itself, we can able to identify the reason of having meta. Meta nothing but it's a metadata of your class. So think about your class is nothing but it is a set of values, set of information about your tables, right? In order to tweak those changes or in order to play with those meta information or the field type information, Django, they itself they given this out of the box concept called meta. And there is a difference between guys. This meta is a Django meta inner class from a model parent class. From a model parent class, meta is a inner class, and there is Python meta class is there. That is totally different than the meta inner class in Django. So if we take a look on what exact meaning of meta class. Meta class is a simply an inner class, right? Because what you're seeing is there is a one class model. Within the class model, we have a inner class or subclass for a given um, parent class, right? In Django, use of meta class is simply provide metadata to the model form class, right? Because we were simply using the models we inherited model class. On top of that, we gonna use all this metadata information in the meta inner class. So meta information is nothing but what and all we can have that um, in a column. For example, if you want to rename the column, or if you want to sort the column, or if you want to rename the table name, or if you want to change the um, constraints, or if you want to add index, or if you want to add the table space, all kind of stuff you can play around with this help of meta inner class. So please make sure with the difference meta versus meta class. Meta is a Django inbuilt in class or inner class. Meta class is nothing but it's a Python um, concept that if you have any doubt on what is meta versus meta class, please throw your question on comment section. I will try to provide the answer. Okay, so this is all about meta, right? Having the uh, metadata about your class model. So what and all information we have in the meta? If you take this as an example, it has a couple of um, arguments they have given. This is the called global variable, right? Because we haven't passed any, we are not initializing any variable. Rather, we are just using the global variable. So that is the concept of global variable. So global variable, you have to use the variable name as it is without modifying the instance variable, right? So let's take a look on our model, the post model. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type class meta. Since it's a class, so we have to make sure it's a part of our post parent class or base class. Now let's take a look on the current post here. What you're seeing is we whatever the objects we are creating, whatever the post we are creating, it is inserting based on the latest object has been inserted, right? What does it mean is if I add the new post, let's say block 13, right? Pick one value and save. And what you're seeing is it's inserting the value on the top line, right? But the first post has been created. It has been on the first level, and latest has been in the top level. It's like there is no concept called last in first out here, but I don't want to confuse. So basically, whenever by default, whenever you save an object, that object will be in top level, and all the history record will be in downside. I mean, down part of the high level objects. So now what I want to do is I want to change this functionality, or rather I want to sort this objects based on the post title. For example, I want to sort based on the post title name by ascending, right? Even you can do ascending on strings also, right? So ordering is an variable. It's a global variable for this inner subclass. So you have to stick with the same name, and in single quotes you can pass this title. So once you change something on meta class or the model class, what do you have to do? We have to do the make migration and do the migrate. And if you run server, perfect. If I go back to my post page, if I refresh, what you're seeing now, it has been sorted based on the post title. So by default, this will act as ascending. So what does it mean is ascending. It should be like this, right? So every characters, the starting character should be A, and starting number should be 1, right? That is how the ascending will be work. So what you're seeing here is it is changing the rendering format to by default method to now ascending order by an post title itself. Now, what if I want to descending, right? You can simply add the minus symbol or hyphen symbol. If I add hyphen symbol, and what I have to do, I have to refresh, right? I have to do the make migration and do the migrate and do run server. And if I refresh, I should see post first, because now it's descending, MNOP, right? It's a descending. So this is one of the option we can think of having the metadata, because basically we're changing the metadata of an model class, right? So that is the reason we are they called us meta. So what have other information? So verbose name plural. So basically, if let's take a look on action, then you can see. So what you're seeing here, I can I can rename the post model. Basically, though I created as a singular my model name, but if you see on my Django administration page, by default it added as a plural, right? So let's play around here. Now, if I change to post block, let's see what will happen. Even I don't know, guys, what will happen. Let's take a make migration, migrate, and run server. If I refresh my page, what you're seeing, it's a post block. Instead of having the post, now it's changed to post block. So this is a cool method, right? How the Django is changing the meta information of an given model itself, right? So likewise, we have many options available in the meta inner class itself. We're not going to see all the option, but as far as I know, we'll try to understand from the documentation itself what the the option actually does, right? So this is the documentation where we can see all the meta options for a given model. So one of the option called abstract. So abstract is nothing but basically, for example, you have a parent class or called instead of showing here, let's say I want to use all this column uh, into on another model, right? So I can simply say abstract equal to true. If I change this option, or if I um, have this option in my meta class, then this meta or this model will not treat as a table. What does it mean is you cannot use this, or will not able to use this as a regular Django model. Rather, I can create another model, and then I can inherit this post model itself here. So if you take a look on the Django documentation, you might understand what it really have the concept. Okay, if you see, we have a common information that is a what that is our base model, and if you enable this abstract equal to true, then I can simply you inherit the base model to the student model class. Then what will happen is this name and age also will be a part of student subclass. So that is the core concept of having abstract. So, but one thing is, on regular Django model, if you don't have this option, you can able to get the data, right, using the Django shell also, objects.get, everything you can able to play around with the regular Django model. But once you added this condition, then this class no more called the Django. It's a class. It's just a class. We cannot use this class for any purpose like creating a form or creating or accessing the object. That's what I'm saying. The common information model cannot be used as a normal Django model, because but you can use the student model as a normal Django model. What does it mean, normal Django model? You can simply use the model manager, query set, and all kind of information just like normal normal model. right? But once you added this information, you cannot access this model class anymore in your view or anymore uh, in your query set. So that is all about having the abstract part. So in case if you have any doubt on this portion, uh, please your question on the comment section, or if you want a separate video having the practical example of having this abstract class, let me know on comment section also. I will put a separate video for abstract class. Okay, then move on. So this app label. So app label is not um, that key option, but sometimes it would help us to differentiate. For example, if you add a third party app, on third party app something requires some models information, right? Those part you can specify the um, respective app name in your class meta. So that is all about the app label concept. So I'm I know, guys, it will be a little tricky as long as once you start implementing the actual concept. But if you're not familiar or if you're looking for any help from the app label, or if you're working on some project, if you get stuck on something on app label, let me on comment section. I will try to um, provide a more insight on what is actually it will do. Okay, and this base manager name is also called override your object's query set's name itself. And this and all not much relevant, frequently used, but yes, of course, you can play around with that base manager. And the DB table. So what is DB table? So right now, um, let me take a look on visualizer. Um, okay, I don't see that option. Okay, anyway, forget. Okay, so the DB table, it's nothing but by default, um, our class model name, right? It will create the backend table uh, name called blog underscore post, right? Okay, so by default, our Django model, it will create the table name um, using the app name underscore our the model class name, right? For example, in our situation, this blog underscore post is our model name, or as a table name, right? I can um, I can change this table name using this DB table. So if I add DB table equal to, let's say, post test. If I added this information, or if I added this variable like DB table equal to post test, and what we have to do, we have to do the make migration, right? So do the make migration and migrate and run server. If I refresh my MySQL database, what you're seeing. So the by default, it has been created block underscore post, but we can override that option using the meta DB table variable, right, or argument. So that is super cool from the Django perspective. So this is one of the reason I really love Django to play around with for all our learning purpose. Okay, so that is all about the uh, DB table. And of course, you can also um, provide that database table space. If you're familiar with the database, every schema, it has to be logically, um, we have to provide the table space. It's like a block for having the data in your hard disk, right? So we can specify the um, table space. If you're not familiar with, you can check with your DBA team what is the table space for a given schema. So that is all about table space. And we do have a option called every model. By default, it has a manager. So we can also override that manager concept using the meta information. If you have a, but anyway, as part of the series, we're going to cover model manager in future. Then you may be able to correlate how the manager we can overwrite with the meta information itself. And the default related name. So if you watch my the model series, initial video, we were discussed about related name, right? We can have a related name for a given model wherever we want to traverse from one model to other model. But you can also have a default related name as a meta subclass also. That is all about having the default related name. So get latest by. So get latest by, it is pretty much same like ordering, right? Ordering also, that's what they mentioned. Latest by ascending order date. You can ascending the you can set the value for a given a field, right? So this will help from the query set perspective. The ordering, the one which we did earlier, right? This ordering, this will help from the rendering perspective on Django admin page that we saw earlier, how we can rendering the object, not only the admin, even in the front-end UI, if you develop the Django view, you can have your data query sets in an ordering format. But if you want to have the query set has to be in a given format. When I say given format, it may be required to ascending or descending, all the stuff. Then you can have this get underscore latest by option as part of a meta class. Then you can able to retrieve the data as same as like anything. Okay, if you have any doubt on this get latest by, because this is very important, it's if you difference between the ordering versus get latest by. If you have any doubt, just put on comment section. Okay, what is all about managed? So managed nothing but, okay, by default, manage is a false. If I, by default it's true. If I add, let's say, whenever do any field addition, right? If I add a new column here or new field here, then we have to do the make migration, right? So make migration and migrate. What that will do is migrate will create the new column in the database, right? But so by default, the managed option will be true. That is the reason the when you do the migration, right? Python manage.py migrate, that will do the column addition in database level. But if I changed something like managed equal to false, let's say I'm adding a new column like a test column for testing, right? So test column, um, like models or integer field. I'm just giving for testing purpose, guys. So um, null equal to true and blank equal to true. If I added, so if I do any changes, what we have to do? We have to do the make migration, right? So what I'm expecting is this should has to create the column uh, in my SQL database or in my SQL table, right? As of now, I don't see that column here. If I do make migration and do migrate and run server, and if I refresh my MySQL database, let me close this, open. What you're seeing? Still, I don't see that column in my table, right? So this will helpful. Think about this situation. Um, you are doing some you want to migrate the code from production to local or development environment, but you still want to pointing to the production environment for some situation or some reason, right? But uh, you don't want to change anything, or do you want to uh, change any column, you don't want to do any migration. Basically, the when you do the Python manage migrate, actually you don't want to do anything from your database perspective. Then you can enable this option in the meta subclass. Then it will not do any migration from your database perspective. If I get rid of this option and um, stop working, okay. If I do make migration now, if I do migrate and if I do run server doesn't required, but I'm just make sure. If I open my object and see the column, uh, it still um, didn't add, right? What was the reason? Did I save my object? Um, yes, I saved my object. Let me specific to the app block and migrate block and run server. Then if I go back here, let me close this object again, refresh my tree, open the post object, I'm seeing. Now I'm seeing that the new column, right? So that is all about having the um, model, uh, the managed option. So just like that, we have an option called order with respect to. So order with respect to, basically you can travel one class to other class. So you can specify, hey, I want to traverse my answer subclass, answer class model class to question model class. Then you can specify order with respect to the given model name. Then you can able to traverse like this in a query set. So um, that is also um, one of the um, common features mostly people used to do in for the debugging purpose to understand what's going on in the primary key, foreign key perspective. That's all about ordering, and order we already saw. And permissions. Permissions is nothing but you can, if you have a separate permission option in your users table, you can specify um, the permission in your meta class. Hey, whenever I do the save an object, whether this model should have access only add, change, delete, view, and those kind of information um, you can have it in your meta class. That is all about the having the permission, and you can take a look on default permissions also pretty much same. And proxy proxy it's not it's a kind of it's like kind of abstract what we saw, right? If you take a look on proxy model document, what we're seeing is it's just like inheriting the value or the meta information from the parent class and do some functionality on top of uh, the parent class. So you just take a look on this, guys. So this document has a pretty good information about having the what is the reasons of having the proxy model. If you have any doubt, let me know, because I cannot cover all the areas, because I'm getting multiple requests from the um, from the um, from the folks to um, implementing the actual project. So I'm skipping many options here, but I'm 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 open, guys. If you have any doubt on a specific topic, just put on a comment section. I will try to make a separate video for those topic. Okay, that's all about having that proxy and required DB features like gather status in many required DB features we may require, right? That is not a mandatory part, but you can also take a look on um, required. And in index also you can specify, hey, if you're familiar with the database architecture, then should familiar with what is index, you can specify the composite index, primary key index. So basically it will speed up your query execution engine if you have an index. So you can also take a look on what are the specific composite kind of index you can play around with the Django models. And all about index together constraints. Constraints nothing but it's like you can specify when you do some validation, you can provide a hey, the this site is belongs to adult kind of, so you can do some validation on top of your metadata information. That's all about constraints. So verbose name, verbose plural, all we um, pretty much we covered, right? So I hope this um, give high level introduction about the having the meta class. So we also seen a few options in a real-time situation, right? So as I mentioned, I am not able to cover all the options here because we had to jump on various models, concepts is pending, and also we do have a planning to have a real-time project. So I'm skipping many. I just provided the couple of options at high level, not implemented in the project itself. So, but in case if you want, let me know in comment section. I will do a separate video for that. Okay, so we'll see you in another video. See you guys.